It is a tough pill to swallow, but I think it's finally time to admit that Patrick Mahomes should no longer be considered a weekly top 10 quarterback in fantasy. We dig into our week 4 quarterback and running back rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. We are heading into our week 4 rankings. We're going to start today with quarterbacks and running backs. Tomorrow, we will finish up with wide receivers and tight ends. Typically, we start the show with running backs, but we're going to switch it up this week because the quarterbacks are actually the more interesting position to rank and the harder one to figure out. So like right out the top, obviously, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen. Kyler Murray gets Washington. I mean, we both have him as our quarterback 1. It's so easy. But Jaden Daniels, you have as your quarterback 2. I have him as my quarterback 3. Is he a weekly now just top 3 quarterback? This is where he's going to be for the majority of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this matchup, it's just as good for the Commanders on the other side. They just torched the Bengals defense on Monday night, so they could have a little bit of a letdown as they remain on the road here in Arizona, but it's Cliff Kingsbury. He's returning. He's on fire calling plays, by the way. They've not really had to think about punting the last 2 weeks. I mean, the previous week was a field goal fest. This past week was a touchdown kind of a breakout game for this entire offense. So their offense is moving the ball. And we'll see about some injuries. Austin Eckler is a little bit banged up, but again, they're pretty deep. Brian Robinson Jr. is running well. They've got multiple tight ends. Luke McCaffrey's coming on. Terry McLaurin is now seeing deep balls that are kind of eluded him there with all these other quarterbacks who have started for the Commanders. So they're feeling it. Jaden Daniels is running, but he's picking his spots. He's using it to extend plays, get things downfield. I think the traditional running game, some of these additions they made on the offensive line, they're really starting to pay off, including Tyler Biadasz. He's playing well. So now you're having a power running game. That opens up everything, right? It opens up your running quarterback. It opens up throwing downfield. What you're seeing is a bit of Lamar Jackson effect on Jaden Daniels. The thing is, I think 2 things. I think he might actually have a stronger arm than Lamar Jackson, and he's just as fast, and he's young. So his fresh legs are out there. So I do like it. Both these guys, let's produce. Let's just go. Let's just get a 50-plus point effort combined from these teams and just go off. I think we're going to have a lot of good fantasy success. Watch some injuries there, not just Eckler, but on the other side, Trey McBride has a concussion.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to the gross tight ends and all the injuries to the top guys. But yeah, Jaden Daniels has played 3 games so far in his career. He finished as a quarterback 3 in 2 of those weeks. So amazing start for him. Now, Jalen Hurts, he started off the season fine, quarterback 7 in week 1, not as big as we wanted as he was going like first off the board. Quarterback 2, though, in week 2, but last week, not great. Quarterback 20 on the week. He might not have both A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith this week. We're still waiting to see if Brown will come back from the hamstring injury. Devonta Smith left with a pretty nasty concussion last week. You're still holding strong with him as your quarterback 5 in this matchup against the Buccaneers. I am down at quarterback 9 because if he's throwing to, only Dallas Goedert, I don't feel great about that.
Yeah, it's interesting what the Eagles have been trying to do. I think they should pivot to being a run-heavy offense, and the problem with that is Saquon Barkley has been so good, and he's scoring touchdowns that Jalen Hurts would often get in the red zone. So I think this is why I have him this high, is I think he's still got a high running floor. Like, even when everything breaks down, he's terrible. He had a 300-yard game with a bunch of turnovers last week, and it hurt. Like, if he just cut down a couple of those turnovers, he still would have had a decent game. So that's the thing. He's turning over the ball, maybe forcing things to happen too much downfield that aren't there. He did have a bit of a slump, by the way, passing at the end of last season as well. So this is carried over a little bit, but he's Jalen Hurts. I think he'll be fine. I'm hoping that this game could produce some points here where we go back and forth a little bit, and that would put the ball up a little bit more. But I think Hurts, again, I think he's probably going to get 60 rushing yards, so that kind of starts you out with a touchdown, and then kind of build on that with that number. So I don't love the matchup this week, but I think you'll see him kind of take the game in his own hands and find a way to compile stats.
We both also, so another guy who struggled last week was CJ Stroud. He's actually struggled the last 2 weeks, finished as the quarterback 17 in week 2, quarterback 25 in week 3. A couple hard matchups for him, right? Against the Bears and the Vikings, especially that Vikings defense looks so good. We're saying put him right back in. Quarterback 4 for me, quarterback 6 for you. We love him this week against the Jaguars, who they got so embarrassed by Josh Allen, right? But Tua even put up 19 points against them earlier on in the season in week 1 with only 1 passing touchdown, but put up 338 yards. CJ Stroud's going to have a nice day. But I want to move on to Patrick Mahomes because typically keeps getting ranked in the top 5, right? We're starting to move him down. But I think this should have probably happened a long time ago. You're still holding him in the top 10. He's at 8 for you against the Chargers. I'm at 11. And honestly, that might be too high for him. Over the first 3 weeks, he's finished as the quarterback 15, quarterback 14, quarterback 12. To end last season, he finished as the quarterback 16, 19, 17, 17, 20, 21. He was outside the top 10 quarterbacks 11 times and finished as a quarterback 15 or worse 8 times last year. When is it that we just realize maybe Mahomes is better for the NFL than he is for fantasy?
Yeah, and what's happening is where you have some clear-cut matchups that are just really good for passing right now. You look at the Jaguars, you mentioned Stroud, you have the Rams, are a great matchup, and the Cardinals Commanders. The Chargers are not one of those matchups that Mahomes gets, and the schedule always seems to be pretty tough for the Chiefs, right? They're always facing the best of the other team. And what does the other team do against Patrick Mahomes? They try to limit the big plays. Now, what they've done is try to take out Travis Kelce in a lot of these games, and then he's kind of got frustrated, not going to Kelce. Then he kind of just relies on Rashee Rice to do everything for him. And the target share of Rice is something like 34% this season. So he's got eyes for Rice. He's trying to figure it out with the others. I think what's also happened is there's no Marquise Hollywood Brown, so another weapon, and Xavier Worthy. They're not consistent in his usage, right? So then his weapons are coming down to Rice, and then if Kelce's bottled up, there's not a lot of avenue for production, right, from Patrick Mahomes. The other problem is the Chiefs' defense continues to flex a little bit. Stop doing that. And their red zone is not very good either without Isaiah Pacheco. So they're getting a lot of Harrison Butker opportunities here. You need the touchdowns from Mahomes to make it pay off because you're not going to get insane volume. He doesn't need to throw it. And this week, what happens? It's not a duel with Justin Herbert. It's probably Taylor Heineke or Easton Stick on the other side. So yet another game where he's not going to put up. So I think the way you like Mahomes is you just don't want to miss out. Here's what I'm going to say. If there's the kind of the 203 type game that he gets out in front and he throws a few short touchdowns to Kelce or whoever, if you miss out on that, you're going to feel bad. So I think it's really hard. But this is why we didn't want you to kind of draft Mahomes there as a value. You're going to have to sweat this out every week, even in a matchup where you go, oh, can I sit him? And then he underwhelms and you play him and it's bad. And then he goes off in a week and you get upset about yourself. So it's very frustrating right now as a Mahomes manager because you want to play him every week and be reliable, but you can't do that and just say automatic big points.
Yeah, it's been about 300 days since he last finished as a top 10 quarterback. Yeah. But we keep ranking him there. I finally took him out, quarterback 11. He doesn't have to face Derwin James. The Chiefs get so lucky, right? The one game that Derwin James is going to miss, of course, is the game against Patrick Mahomes. But so maybe that will help him. Now, I have Dak Prescott as my quarterback 6 this week. You would still have him in the top 10 at 10 right there. I just love the matchup against the Giants. He destroys them all the time. He owns them, right? Won the last 12 games against them, has 26 passing touchdowns over that span. The team averages 33 points in those games, and they don't have a running game. So I think Dak Prescott is great. Do you agree with me there?
Yeah, now that you're talking about it, I probably should have flipped Prescott and Mahomes in my rankings. So if you're in a situation where you have both these guys, unlikely, maybe a super flex you do, that you're going to have to play both of them anyway, then I would say Prescott is a little bit safer, right? I think Mahomes, you just go for that potential ceiling because it could happen anytime where Dak has got a very high floor now. I mean, his weapons are back. Jalen Tolbert's coming on to help Jake Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb was upset about himself last week, so he'll probably be motivated as well on Thursday night to write it against the Giants.
We both also have Joe Burrow, obviously, in our top
Yeah.
7. I have him at 5. You have him at 7. But let's dig a little bit deeper here in case you need to find a different quarterback to play this week. You got Justin Fields against the Colts, Caleb Williams against the Rams, or Sam Darnold, who's been great for fantasy, but gets the Packers. So you got Williams and Fields with great matchups. Darnold with a hard one, but he's been the best fantasy quarterback so far among this group. But rank these guys for me for week 4. What would be your order?
Yeah, I'm going to be very careful about this Vikings-Packers game, especially the passers. So Sam Darnold and if Jordan Love returns, just a little bit intimidated by it. But now it comes down to Justin Fields and Caleb Williams. I mean, Bears fans don't want to hear that, but that's what it is. So, like Justin Fields, I think is going to have to do a lot on the ground. Can he get to 100 on the ground for the first time as a Steeler? Yes, it's possible because the Colts are very bad against the run. Keep in mind that Malik Willis game that just happened in Green Bay a couple weeks ago where they just kept running the quarterback. What do you think they're going to do here? They're just going to keep running the quarterback, keep running Najee Harris. They're going to try to shorten this game and make it as easy as possible. And the Steelers also are facing a slumping Anthony Richardson. So it really comes down. This is a tough call because you want to make sure Fields is involved enough in the running game and can get enough touchdowns in a game like this where the Steelers defense should dominate to really pay off. If he does that, then he's the clear better play. But Caleb Williams could be in a situation where he's attacking that Rams defense downfield. I think he had a lot of confidence last week. The running game stinks for the Bears, so he's probably going to have to throw a ton here. So I actually think it's a good thing that Keenan Allen's not out there because it seems to free out Williams. Okay, I'm going downfield to Rumidins. I'm trusting Cole Kmet, who had a better rapport with. And, of course, DJ Moore's in there. So I think, let's say if you're in a passing touchdown league where it counts as 4, you might lean a little bit towards Field. I know it's like getting a little tight there, but I like both of them this week. So, again, I think you're a little bit more run and touchdown dependent on Fields, where I think Williams is going to get it done with maybe another 300-yard game.
Yeah, Williams might be a little bit riskier with the turnovers, but I would rank them Williams, Fields, and then Sam Darnold. It's just a really hard matchup for him. We're going to move on to our running back rankings now. There's some tough decisions that have to be made. So we'll get into all of that and have our debates right after we hear from one of our sponsors.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and you've heard us talk a lot about it. And hey, NFL fans, you can start and continue the season here in the quarter marks, so to speak, of Week 4 with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play, and much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed right now. So start your season right now if you haven't done so. All you have to do is place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $200 again in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's all you have to do. Put $5 down there and get in on the action at FanDuel. Check it out because FanDuel.com's got everything for you as the #1 sportsbook in America. Good odds all around. I like some of the games this week. We talked about Commanders, Cardinals. I like the Commanders to go on the road and win again against the Cardinals this week. So that's one of my favorite bets here, my upset that I'm looking at for sure this week. So a lot of good stuff going on around the NFL. But you can figure out your own wagers and get into the action. Again, $5 bet is going to get you $200 in bonus bets only on FanDuel. Again, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Michelle, let's look at our running back rankings here for Week 4. Saquon Barkley, off to a hot start, clear #1 here. But some guys that we want to talk about behind him that might have some question marks on how high to rank them or if you want to use them at DFS. Jonathan Taylor, let's start there. He's getting the tough Steelers defense here. I have him all the way at RB3. You have him at RB10. So I'll let you start and see why you're down on Taylor a little bit more this week.
Yeah, it's just the fact that he has to face the Steelers. I mean, they've been the best running defense in the league through 3 weeks, second best, I should say, allowing 71 rushing yards per game, 3.5 yards per carry. But they are allowing the fewest rushing yards over expectations in the league, according to Next Gen Stats, at -67. Like, they're just dominating on defense right now. They held Bijan Robinson to only 13.5 points, and that was with him getting receptions. They held Javonte Williams. Obviously, he doesn't do anything, but also J.K. Dobbins, who's been killing it this year, puts up only 6.9 fantasy points. They held him to 2.9 yards per carry. He was averaging nearly 10 yards per carry from weeks 1 and 2. So like their defense is just too good. I just don't envision, like, I still have him as obviously a very playable guy. I have him at 10, but I'm not going to be surprised if he finishes much worse than that.
Yeah, I think I'm going with the talent and momentum of this player. Like he's just been really good early in the season, and I'm also looking at he's basically been the entire Colts offense that is reliable at this point. So again, they're going to feed him a lot, try to get a win here, and try to get to 500 against the Steelers. It's going to be a tough matchup, and keep in mind this spread is not that big. Like the Colts are seen to have a chance in this game within a field goal. So they might stay in it for a while, which would say that Taylor would get his share of volume here and go into the fourth quarter. So I expect a lot of running in this game. And when I say that, not just Taylor and Najee Harris, but a lot of Richardson and Fields in this one as well.
There should be a lot of running on both sides for sure. We'll see how, like, hopefully the Steelers can for once just kick someone's butt, right?
Yeah.
And then that might also hurt Jonathan Taylor. But I say hopefully because I'm a Steelers fan. So that's why I mentioned that. I guess it wouldn't be great for fantasy for Jonathan Taylor. But let's move on to Devon Anan. Miserable week for the entire Dolphins offense. But first 2 weeks, he finishes as a running back 6, running back 3. Last week, running back 36. Now, there is some rumblings that Tyler Huntley could start. I would feel much better about Achane if Huntley's out there as a starter than if they go back to Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle. Oh my goodness. We both still have them ranked inside the top 12. I'm at 11. You have them at 9. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, and I also like this matchup. It's against the Titans. It's at home. It's on Monday night. HN is a kind of a big flair, big play type guy. He'll be in prime time under the lights. And Tyler Huntley would open a lot for Devon Anan. Now, it's going to be interesting if we have Mike McDaniel kind of adjust the offense, right? Maybe they throw in some zone read and that kind of thing, some wrinkles to kind of throw off the Titans. The Titans really struggled. Keep in mind what Malik Willis did last week. So I would follow that game plan. I'm going to say, hey, let's get the running quarterback in there. It's going to get a running game going. We saw the big runs last week from Emmanuel Wilson in this matchup. So, yeah, you can burst on this Titans run defense. You just have to get to the outside and do that. And Achane, that's a strength, right? He likes to turn the corner and get downfield. So I think it could be a big night for him on Monday.
There's one guy at the running back position that kind of reminds me of the Garrett Wilson and the Patrick Mahomes, right? And it's Travis Etienne, where you just keep ranking him high just because of his name. But really, he's not putting up the fantasy points to be ranking him this high. So you have him at 12. I'm at 14. It's been a while since he's been a good fantasy asset. The first 3 weeks of the season, it's 22, 21, 21. The second half of last year, we know it was miserable for him for fantasy. So the Texans aren't the best team to go against as a runner either. He's looked terrible as a receiver this year. They're trying to get him the ball, but he keeps dropping it or just struggling to, get any yards after the catch. ETN should probably be lower in our rankings, but it's just hard.
Yeah, because he's a volume-based play. That's the thing. And we want something out of the Jaguars to work and make us feel good this season. But here's the problem, and this is a lingering problem from last year. I'm going to call it Doug Peterson and Press Taylor. I can't believe they kept this combination together for this offense. They just are not very creative. They kind of tell you what they're doing. It's like, okay, we're going to throw the middle field to Christian Kirk and Ingram. If that doesn't work, we're going to just try to run the ball. And then they're not sure of the personnel usage either, right? I mean, when Evan Ingram was in there before he got hurt, he was underutilized strangely. And then Brenton Strange, no pun intended, gets in the game and scores. And then I just don't know what they're doing. Like Tank Bigsby was a thing in week 1, then he disappeared, then he came back. Like, what are you doing here with your personnel usage? It's very confusing and very hard to read. Do they want to be a big play offense or are they a dink and dunk offense? I don't think they know, and we don't know. So Travis Etienne is the only thing that I think we kind of know that he's a pretty good back. He can get volume. Let's get some touchdowns, though, from him. That's the biggest thing that's going to be important if he's going to live up to that ranking.
Yeah, I mean, if you have ETN, you select him early, you're just going to keep rolling with him. Maybe you can get someone to trade with you because of the big name. Maybe you try that. Now, I'm high on Najee Harris this week. And again, I'm a Steelers fan, so maybe I'm being biased, but I don't normally rank him this high. He's running back 13 for me this week. You still have him down again at 23. It's against the Colts. And I know they ended up holding DeAndre Swift last week in the Bears offense. But I'm starting to think like the Bears run game, you might just be able to throw away, right? Like they're just stink. And Najee Harris has looked really, really good. I know his stats for some reason don't say that. His fantasy points don't, but he looks good. Jalen Warren is dealing with an injury. He was limping to start last week. So I don't even know what's going on there. But I expect Najee Harris to get a huge workload against the Colts. And it's just hard to say. So a guy with this much volume, he needs to score a touchdown, right? He has 0 this year. But if he gets into the end zone, I think he has a very good shot at being a top 12 running back this week.
Yeah, I think every week Najee Harris looks very good on paper, and then you look at the box score, the other paper, and you're like, this was not what I expected. I wanted a little bit more out of him. And part of the Steelers' offensive line, a bit of work in progress trying to run block. I mean, they have some potential, but it hasn't all come together. So what the Steelers are now are kind of a volume-based running game where we're just running. It's almost like they just want to protect the ball, and they'll be okay punting because they know how good their defense is. Like, just move the ball, eat some clock, punt. And maybe Fields is cutting into his production quite a bit because I know Russell Wilson would not have been running nearly as much, right, if he was in there. So it's a little bit disappointing. But again, the breakout game could come in point, and this is a good point to circle for it.
Yes, I really like this matchup. If you can't trust Najee in this matchup, then what are we even doing here in fantasy, right? Now, we both have Brian Robinson Jr. as good plays this week. He's been getting the volume. He gets the good Cardinals offense, running back 13 for you, running back 18 for me. You have him in your lineup. But James Conner, we're a little bit different on. I have him as a top 8 guy. I'm at running back 8 against Washington. You have him at 14. Running backs have been pretty solid against the Commanders this year. And I know it was a terrible game for Conner in week 3, but great first 2 weeks. I expect him to get right back into it.
Yeah, I like him. I think he has a very nice floor this week. I just don't think there's a lot of upside in this game because I think there's going to be a lot of passing in this one. So we'll see. We'll see where James Conner ends up. I think he's going to be a little bit up and down and might hurt us in some games. But I think overall he'll be steady. That's going to kind of have him in that ranking. Because, again, he's not spectacular to me, but a steady, solid play every week for now as an RB2.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to finish up our running back rankings to finish up today's show. But quickly, we need to hear from another one of our sponsors. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you like, or is that lost in childhood? Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. I know for me, therapy has helped me with this, right? Like I've gotten back into things that I used to love. I love competing. So I got into adult kickball, which is the coolest thing ever. And then, I got the confidence to join Orange Theory because it just gives me that energy and it's helped me so much with my online therapy. It really has made me the best version of myself that I can be. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you don't have to stress because you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon to get started. J.K. Dobbins, we were just talking about him, right? That he got, stifled by that Steelers defense. But I'm going right back to him. He got so much of the workload. Like he kind of just took over Gus Edwards' snaps completely and workload. He got almost all of the carries in that backfield, which I think is a great thing. Like, yeah, he stunk for fantasy, but it's good to see him taking over that backfield slowly. I have him at running back 15. You have him at 18. I would have him higher, but this Chiefs matchup is still pretty difficult. And there might not be any Herbert.
Yeah, I'm afraid that he's going to see some really tough fronts here with Nick Bolton leading the way. So, I mean, I want the Chargers to stay in the game. That's my little bit concern here. Like if the Chiefs, again, that's the concern we have with Mahomes. Like if it's too easy of a walkover for the Chiefs in this one, I figure the Chargers will find a way to keep it competitive. It's a division game. It's Jim Harbaugh. That's kind of what he does here. But I don't know if Dobbins can have a big game. I could see him having a touchdown, maybe like 60 to 70 yards on the ground and a few catches. And that's still a playable guy. I mean, he's still the volume guy that you have to play. You just have to lower your expectations.
You definitely do, because if there's no Justin Herbert, we'll see if he plays or not. I do expect the Chargers, obviously, to try their best hard out on defense and then just run the ball a ton. So he should get a lot of volume. We'll just see how efficient he can be with that volume. Now you have Rashad White all the way up at running back 16 versus the Eagles. This is our biggest difference of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I have him down at running back 32, and I actually have him ranked 2 spots behind Bucky Irving, where Bucky Irving actually finished well ahead of Rashad White last week in fantasy. Listen, I think the takeover is happening. Bucky Irving already had more carries than White last week. He is performing so much better than White. White's been the worst running back in the league over the last 2 years. They need to move on and get on with it. And Bucky Irving needs to be their starting running back if they actually want to have a good running game.
Yeah, things have changed quite a bit here with their offense as they've gone to Liam Cohen, who worked with Sean McVay. We know Sean McVay quickly pivots off running backs if they're not producing and finds guys. It doesn't matter what their draft pedigree is. So something might be happening here with White and Irving. Now, I'm giving White one last chance because this matchup against the Eagles is pretty good for the running game. And he's got to get going. Like this matchup says he can, because you can run on the Eagles. They're better pass rush and kind of pressure team. So when I look at that, this is an opportunity for Rashad White. Maybe do a little bit more. If the game gets a little out of hand and the Eagles are in control and they tee off on Baker Mayfield, then you can see some check down. So I think this is the last chance for Rashad White for me. I'm a little bit optimistic. I don't have him in leagues like I did last year. So it's not a personal thing, but like I just want to see what happens if I have one more piece of evidence. I think I need one more game to kind of really say, okay, it's really happening. And then, yeah, we'll see Bucky Irving, I guess, as a regular play.
Yeah, I would love Bucky Irving to take over because then we might actually get some good play back there instead of just hoping for that, if you're in full PPR that you get those 5 receptions for 2 yards and, you get 5 free yards from him. Zach Moss, we agree with this week. We both like him as a running back 2 play against the Panthers, running back 20 for me, running back 17. He finished as a running back 10 last week. He's a good play moving forward as long as the matchup is solid. Now, what about Josh Jacobs? Is he just bad? Like, he's through 3 weeks, he's finished as the running back 26, 13, and 45. Where you drafted him, that is not good enough. He gets a super hard defense this week against the Vikings. You're very, very low on Jacobs at running back 27. I might join you and push him down a little bit. Right at this moment, I have him at running back 19. But man, it's a tough matchup. Emmanuel Wilson is starting to steal his carries and snaps. What do you do with Josh Jacobs, Vinny?
Yeah, clearly I'm a lot more down on Josh Jacobs than I am on Rashad White. And maybe Rashad White I still think can catch his way out of it. I don't know if Jacobs can do it, right? And White kind of lived on catches and touchdowns to save his inefficiency last year. Well, that's not happening here for Josh Jacobs. He's not involved too much in the passing game. He's not scoring. This is not a good thing to have your running back have an intensely high volume, right? It was great for that 1 year where Josh Jacobs had that big year, but once you get that year, it's like your body is still trying to catch up and rest up. And we've seen it a little bit with Chris McCaffrey. We saw with Jonathan Taylor, right? Where he had the big year of scrimmage yards, and then it takes a while to get back to that level of being able to carry a load. He's just not a workhorse anymore. Like that was our thing, right? With him with the Raiders. I mean, you're seeing most of the touches there. Well, that's not happening as much for Packers, and this is despite A.J. Dillon and Marshawn Lloyd not being available. So the Packers are seeing something. They want a little bit more dynamic running. I think Jacobs is kind of a plotter at this point. So I think that's what's happening. We'll see if it continues here. But, yeah, you can't be really excited. I think it actually might be a better game for Aaron Jones, by the way, revenge game on the other side for the Vikings.
It will be interesting to see what Aaron Jones can do. That will be a fun one. That's like a real revenge one though, like because they kind of threw him out, right? For Josh Jacobs.
He'll be motivated. And the Packers are weak run defense, so that's a difference between these two. The Vikings are good up front, the Packers are not.
Absolutely. Now, rank these 3 guys from here to finish up our running back talk. Carson Steele against the Chargers. Chuba Hubbard, I always want to call him Chuba because it's so much more fun, against the Bengals, or Ramondre Stevenson against the 49ers.
Oh, boy.
Now, Hubbard finishes the running back 5 last week. Steele got a ton of workload immediately in his first start in the NFL, but Kareem Hunt was activated. So are you worried about that? Rank these 3 guys.
Yeah, I'm not going to recommend Carson Steele. Like, everyone got excited about this guy, but keep in mind the power back in the Chiefs offense is going to have a limited role, and you're really hanging on a touchdown that may not come. And if you have competition for touches, that's not going to come. So I would drop him down a little bit. Stevenson, hopeful. I mean, I do not like this matchup, but the 49ers have not been so dominant on the ground. Keep that in mind because we had a very good game from Kyron Williams last week. Now, the Patriots up front aren't as strong, but the Rams did it without Jonah Jackson in there. So maybe it's the Rams are seeing something in the interior that you can attack on the 49ers a little bit more. And I think that's something to keep in mind. And so I think I do like Stevenson a little bit more if they can hang around a little bit in that game. But I do clearly like Chuba Hubbard because you look at that Bengals run defense, it is soft now in the middle. They've got some injuries. That's really what set the tone for that Commanders game. We saw Jaden Daniels with big plays, but it was Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler coming out and running and running and running. So Hubbard's going to get the volume as long as Jonathan Brooks is not there. So I really like Hubbard this week. I think it's clear Stevenson, more talent and volume-based play, and Steele, absolutely not if Hunt is even a question to be activated this week.
Yeah, I know. It'll be interesting. He already was activated,
Yeah,
so
well, I
we'll
mean,
see
active
in the
for
game.
game
Yeah,
week,
yeah,
yeah.
active for the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Steele was getting the red zone work. He didn't get into the end zone, but he did see 7 red zone looks, right? It was the second
Yeah.
most among running backs this week. So I liked his usage, but Kareem Hunt could ruin it all. So it's definitely Hubbard among this group because, like you said, the matchup is just so juicy. The only reason I'm worried about Stevenson, it's not so much the 49ers are a great run defense. They're not even a good
Yeah.
defense right now. But if the 49ers offense can destroy the Patriots, like what happened with the Jets last week, they ended up just taking Stevenson out and using Antonio Gibbs. That's my worry with him. So it's Hubbard by a good far margin for me as well. That is it for today's show. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen of the day. But for your second listen, the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the local Locked On experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, and detailed breakdowns all in 30 minutes. It's a new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I hope you all have a great night. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.